Welcome back. We are back with another trade targets video by position. I do this video every couple of months going through my wide receiver buys, my wide receiver sells, running back buys, running back sells, and I figured it was definitely apropos this time of year because a lot of you guys are probably deciding what to do with your dynasty teams. Should you rebuild? Should you look to contend again? Are you kind of in a house money window? Etc., etc. So today we're going to break down some of my biggest sells, biggest buys at each position. And of course, this comes on the heels of a brand new Dynasty trade value chart update, which of course you can get access to by clicking the link in the pinned comment, going over to flockfantasy.com, signing up using the promo code FSE. And when you sign up annually, you'll get 6 months for free. You'll get 30% off. You'll get a 7-day free trial, and you'll get a free team review from yours truly. I can break down your team, tell you exactly what I would do in your position on a personalized Dynasty Decisions episode. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the buys and sells that you guys all came here for. We're going to start with the wide receiver position. Normally I start with running back, but we'll go to wide receivers this time. Just a quick piece of strategy when buying wide receivers this time of year. You want to keep in mind that talent breaks tiers, situation breaks ties. And basically what I mean by that is that wide receiver, it's not a situation-dependent position like running back can be, or like opportunity-based position like running back can be. So when it comes to the wide receiver position, as soon as the season ends, which the season has now ended for fantasy purposes, the talent, the age, the youth, the projectable volume, all that kind of stuff becomes a lot easier to digest because we're basically just looking for talented wide receivers who may be undervalued because of what they did last year or because of their current situation. So that is kind of the theme of a lot of the buys that I have here, starting with the guys that you guys can see on the screen there: Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, Jayden Reed, etc. Garrett Wilson, one of my top buys at the wide receiver position. I think the reason I'm buying him is simply due to expectation. He was drafted a lot higher in redraft last year than he really finished. He was a wide receiver 17 PPR point per game season, which is solid. I mean, 14.9 PPR points per game, but the expectation got the better of him in people's minds. We all thought this was going to be a 20 point per game scorer. Of course, I did. As you guys know, if you watched our Flock League at all, the 27% target share and top 17 performance that he had this season is actually real progress from what he did as a second-year player, especially in this dumpster fire of an offense. At wide receiver, like I just said, buy talent and hope situation improves. And basically that is what I think will happen with the Jets this year. I do think we're in line for a better coaching upgrade. We should be in line for a quarterback change at some point in time. Again, I can't tell you that I am going to be optimistic on whatever the Jets end up doing because they have disappointed me in a couple straight seasons now because I've been very in on Garrett Wilson, very in on Breece Hall. But I do know that Garrett Wilson is still an extremely talented receiver who may not even be on this team next year. He may be on the Carolina Panthers or the New England Patriots. We have no idea. What I do know about Garrett Wilson is that he's very talented, and I'm buying him because he underperformed relative to expectations last year. Same goes for Zay Flowers. I mean, he started off the season very, very strong, but he still is just a wide receiver entering year 3 in 2025. The offensive coordinator himself labels him as the Jenga piece of this offense. He stretches out the defense horizontally. He is a very talented wide receiver 2 type of producer when he's on his P's and Q's, and the type of asset that he is when he's tethered to a generational future Hall of Fame quarterback at the height of his prime. Like, we are getting the best play out of Lamar Jackson we're going to see probably in his career. We're going to eventually get a big season from Zay Flowers over the next couple of years. Maybe the cards break right. Maybe the chips fall where they may, and he has a wide receiver 1 season next year. I do think that's in the range of outcomes for Zay Flowers because he's still a very young player, still getting better. So I value him, I think, a lot higher than the market. I have him as a top 15 dynasty wide receiver, market more so in the early 20s. So I really like him as a buy. And of course, you guys can see on the trade value chart exactly how I value these players. So if you can get them for anything less than the super flex 1 quarterback prices that are listed there, then definitely go out and send some offers. Jayden Reed is another one of these guys where I think just disappointing back half of the season. We saw what it can look like in Green Bay when Jayden Reed is firing on all cylinders. He finished as the wide receiver 40 in PPR points per game on limited usage. Christian Watson is likely going to be out to start next season because he tore his ACL. Maybe they add, or the market thinks they're going to add wide receiver help in the draft, which is maybe in a lot of people's minds why Jayden Reed is coming at a low price tag. But for me, I would strike ASAP. While the Packers just had this disappointing playoff loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, Jayden Reed got banged up in that game. It looks like to me Jayden Reed has the wide receiver top 24 type of production profile that I'm looking for from a first and a second year wide receiver. and he's coming at a bit of a discount just because of how the last 7 to 8 weeks have transpired. Prior to that, we had a guy, I mean, mid-season this year, like week 6, we were ready to call Jaden Reed a Dynasty wide receiver 1, and I do think he still possesses that type of upside. Even if they do add some pieces to the offense on the wide receiver front, I do think Jaden Reed is still going to be a very, very good option there. So Josh Downs, next up here, I have wide receiver 30 finish this past year as a second-year wide receiver. He's just 23 years old, despite missing most of training camp and the preseason with an ankle issue and the following other issues with Josh Downs, having an historically inaccurate quarterback, playing on a rather dysfunctional offense with other talented players, and the offense generally like to run through the legs of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. 28% targets per route run for a 23-year-old, 26% target share is legit production. I just think Josh Downs is really good. He was a buy for me all last offseason and still is a buy for me now. So if you guys are able to get Josh Downs for anything less than what I value him as, which is a late first-round rookie pick, is what I would pay for him. You can maybe get him for early second-round capital, and I definitely would jump on the chance to do so. And then I'll group these kind of contending wide receivers together, because this time of year can be a very productive time to buy wide receiver production. If you guys, let's say, for example, came in third place, looking to add a piece to push yourself over the top next year. Maybe you just won the championship, looking to add another piece to solidify your title defense. This time of year can be a good time to buy Tyreek Hill types, Devontae Adams types, Deebo Samuel types, because the tightrope that you have to walk, generally speaking, when buying production this time of year is you want to get a good projection, but you want to make sure that they're going to survive free agency and the draft and maintain their good projection, which is why I would suggest if you're going to buy production, especially if they're older, buy it at wide receiver, not running back, because they are less situationally dependent. If you want to go off, Tyreek Hill's season this year where he was wide receiver 32, had a very disappointing year. Do I think he's going to do that again next year? No, I do not. Whether he's a Miami Dolphin or not a Miami Dolphin, I think he should perform at a better level because he was a lot better when Tua was on the field. Devontae Adams, of course, closed out the season very strong. We don't know what his situation is going to be. Is he going to be a Jet? Is he going to be with Rodgers? Is he going to be on a completely different team? Regardless, I think he's going to be on a contending team of some kind, whether it's the Jets back with Aaron Rodgers or maybe he signs with the Chiefs or the Lions or something like that because he wants to go contend for a Super Bowl. I think he is a very good buy. He's valued as like a wide receiver 46, 47 in Dynasty right now because of all of that uncertainty, and he's just simply too talented for that to be the case. And Deebo Samuel, I have like inside my top 40 wide receivers still, and a lot of people have given up on this dude. I mean, he's outside the top 50 wide receivers on Keep Trade Cut right now, and I feel very good that even though he finished wide receiver 46 in PPR points per game, he is still very talented, and the 49ers hopefully will have a better season in 2025. Most teams who had these players, especially too, had disappointing years. They might be looking to rebuild their team or move off of some of these assets. So go send out some offers for Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel. Chris Godwin also fits into this realm as well. Coming off of the injury, I think he's a good buy as well. Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk are also kind of lesser versions of those guys that I just mentioned. Both have good contracts. Both are talented wide receiver 3 type of producers with spike week stretches. We saw Calvin Ridley, for example, after DeAndre Hopkins was traded, produce like a wide receiver 2, 14.5 PPR points per game, and he didn't even have a quarterback. Ridley is likely getting a quarterback upgrade either at number 1 overall with the first pick of the draft or maybe in free agency, and Christian Kirk getting healthier, Lawrence getting healthier, likely a new play caller. I really hope it's not Liam Cohen as a Buccaneers fan, but it could be, and if that's the case, then Christian Kirk will probably play the Chris Godwin role, quote unquote. These two guys are ranked outside of the top 50 wide receivers in Keep Trade Cut value right now, and frankly, to me, that is a little bit ridiculous because it's not like we have a mega great wide receiver class coming in. And Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley both profile at least as very solid number 2 receivers for their respective teams, and maybe even in Calvin Ridley's case, the number 1 wide receiver for that team, potentially with a young, exciting quarterback. Getting into the sells at the wide receiver position. So I went a little in depth on the buys there. And of course, wide receiver and running back is the bulk of this video. Some of the sells that I have listed here: Jackson Smith-Njigba, Rashee Rice, Quentin Johnston, and Ricky Pearsall. So these first two guys, JSN and Rashee Rice, I want to just please listen to me before you go down to the comments and yell at me. These guys are shops, not sells. And what I mean by shops is they are league to league dependent on what the other manager thinks of these players, because in some leagues, I bet he'll be appropriately valued, JSN, Rashee Rice, and in some leagues, I think people will go a little bit overboard. JSN had a great season this year. As a second-year player, he had a wide receiver 20 in points per game. So I know he finished higher than that in total points, but in points per game, wide receiver 20 finish. That was worse than Garrett Wilson. That was worse than Devontae Smith. And I don't see anybody breaking the door down to go buy those guys in trades right now. Ryan Grubb was fired, who had the Seahawks clearly operating as one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL, 4th highest neutral pass rate, 7th in total pass attempts. They clearly want to go more run-heavy. That is very clear based on the move that they made by firing Grubb. They already have come out and said that they want to go more run-heavy. So to me, that could affect JSN. DK Metcalf, of course, had a very down season production-wise as well. They could add wide receiver production to replace Tyler Lockett, which, he didn't really have a big impact this year. And as I said at the beginning of this, talent breaks tiers, but situation breaks ties. And to me, Jackson Smith-Njigba is being elevated almost a tier up based on the actual talent level that I see for him. Because to me, I don't view him all that differently from Ladd McConkey, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Zay Flowers, some of those guys. And he's being ranked above them just because people view his situation to be a little bit better. And of course, because he produced more recently than those guys. So for me, JSN, worth a shop, still a very good asset. You're still happy if you have him. But if you can get top 10 wide receiver price tags for him in Dynasty, which you definitely probably can in a lot of leagues, I would definitely encourage you to shop him. Maybe go up and try and get an even better receiver. Maybe you want to pivot to a younger receiver plus, you might be able to get like Ladd McConkey plus for JSN right now, Marvin Harrison plus for JSN right now, and I would be willing to do that personally. Rashee Rice, I expected to actually be higher on than most because I have him ranked just in my low 20s at wide receiver right now, but he's actually wide receiver 16 on Keep Trade Cut, which to me is a little bit concerning because he has a major injury that he's coming off of and an impending suspension probably coming because of his off-field antics last year. I would sell if you can get wide receiver 16 price tags for him and maybe even buy back in later because I do think the second he gets suspended, he's probably going down in value to where I have him ranked, which is like wide receiver 23, 24 area. He's still a very talented player, but we got the injury, we got the suspension to worry about, and I know Rashee Rice has the potential to elevate himself to, let's say, wide receiver 10 once he's back on the field producing with Patrick Mahomes fully healthy, but that is a probable calendar year away or close to a calendar year away, and I think there's a lot of risk and a lot of things that could change in that period of time leading up to it. So just keep that in mind with Rashee Rice. He's a little bit risky. Quentin Johnston and Ricky Pearsall I also have listed here as sells because I just think they're slightly overvalued. With QJ, I mean, he was a developmental prospect, so him having a good second year versus a bad first year shouldn't have been too shocking to anybody, but a couple spike weeks and some touchdowns isn't enough for me to push him up to like the mid-40s of Dynasty wide receiver rankings. I think he's the perfect guy to use to tier up to another player, to maybe take a second-round pick plus QJ and go up and get a better receiver, or maybe just cash out for an early to mid-second, try and re-roll that asset if you can. Again, you're happy if you drafted QJ at the 108, 109 last year and you thought you had a dead asset and you just had him on your roster and he's now looking a little bit better, you're definitely more happy about that, but I wouldn't count your chickens before they hatch, to be honest, because it's not like I think Quentin Johnston is all of a sudden going to become like a 1,300-yard receiver next year. I think there's promise, there's some upside there, but I'm not super, super excited about QJ, I guess, relative to the rest of the market. Ricky Pearsall is also being elevated almost entirely by situation right now. People think he'll be great because Juwan Jennings maybe wants a payday. Deebo Samuel didn't play very well. Brandon Ayuk coming off of an injury. But he had like 6 of his 10 games this year with below 5 fantasy points. Like Ricky Pearsall had 2 or 3 good performances, something to build on. But he is being ranked one spot behind Josh Downs and Chris Godwin. That is way too high for a guy that, yes, was a first-round pick, yes, is playing for the San Francisco 49ers, but should have showed, I think, a lot more down the stretch of his rookie season than he did. I get the whole incident off the field was definitely scary, and maybe that affected him, but to me, I think by the end of the season, he should have been performing more consistently. That's just my opinion. Again, the 49ers were kind of a dumpster fire at that point in time. I wouldn't get carried away with Ricky Pearsall. A fine option if you have him, but I wouldn't get too carried away ranking him as like a top 35 dynasty receiver like he's currently ranked right now. So moving into the running back position, getting into the running back buys. Again, I will go in depth on running backs, and then I'll probably skim through the quarterbacks and tight ends as I usually do. I want to put a huge asterisk on the running back buys. Number one, January is one of the worst times to buy running backs for one big reason. The NFL draft and free agency can put a big-time kibosh on whatever projectable volume you're looking at for a given running back. So if you're going to buy running backs this time of year, usually I like them to be in the form of rookie draft picks who I will then spend on running backs, or high-end running backs who are not likely to lose their jobs like Devon Achane or Breece Hall or somebody like that. or just go really cheap and send out like, fourth round picks for dumpster diving guys and hope that they work out. Everybody was willing to sell their first rounder last year for Tajay Spears because they thought, oh, he's going to be the Titans' lead back. And then, boom, Tony Pollard signs in free agency. This happens all the time. We saw it with Tyler Algier. We saw it with Michael Carter. We saw it with James Robinson. Sometimes the NFL draft and sometimes even free agency can nuke a projectable volume workload for a running back. And especially this year, the NFL draft is very loaded at this position. At running back, we're probably going to see 8 to 10 guys go in the top 100 picks because the class is that good. So if you are buying a veteran running back right now, make sure that is factored into the price tag. Look at their contracts, look at their standing with the team, in addition to the assets that their team holds. Like, for example, if a team has a running back that you want to buy and they don't hold their second and third round pick in the NFL draft, that makes you feel a little bit better about buying into their running back. And make sure when you're buying into these guys, you get like a 10-20% discount because they could be replaced in the NFL draft. So if you believe, for example, like I do, that if I knew Brian Robinson was going to be the starting running back for Washington by September next year, I would probably be comfortable spending an early second-round pick on him, but I better get him for a mid to late second-round pick right now because there's a chance that they replace him in the draft or add some competition in the draft or whatever the case is. So some of the running back buys that I have listed here: Chuba Hubbard, Brian Robinson, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, Aaron Jones, Audric Estime, and Nick Chubb. All keep in mind that you probably want them for slightly less than what I have their price listed as, and I've even factored that in a little bit. So with Chuba Hubbard, I do believe he's one of the safer back-end RB1s that you can buy because they, of course, already have him under contract. They spent a second-rounder on Jonathan Brooks last year. Miles Sanders is actually still on the team as well, so maybe they're unlikely to address this position. However, Chuba Hubbard is a good buy for a couple of reasons. Very good projectable volume, had an RB1 season this year, probably going to be a third, fourth round redraft pick with a big contract who's just 25 years old. So if you're looking for a contending running back buy for next year, you might even be able to get him cheaper than this just because he wasn't worth this much going into last offseason. You might be able to get him for like an early second. I would feel very comfortable with that. Brian Robinson, again, early second, a smidge high, probably more like a mid to late second to buy him because he's on the last year of his rookie deal. What if Washington adds running backs in the draft or in free agency? Very, very plausible that they do so. Travis Etienne is one of these guys that just had an awful season. So he is being dirt napped in dynasty circles because he was borderline an elite running back entering the year. I mean, people had him ranked as like a top 10 dynasty running back, and I don't know what happened to him, but he absolutely stunk in 2024. It was fumbles, it was drops, it was inefficiencies. RB31 on Keep Trade Cut, to me, though, for a former first-rounder who we once thought was an elite running back, is a little bit too low. It's an offense that can improve. Quarterback needs to stay healthy. ETN may be dealing with something that we don't know about. Former first-rounder who has 80-plus target upside. I get Tank Bigsby is good. It's probably going to be a split backfield, but I think Travis Etienne is undervalued right now, and he's on the last year of his rookie deal and could sign elsewhere in free agency next year. And again, he was a first-round pick for a reason. He had high pedigree. J.K. Dobbins could get re-signed by the Los Angeles Chargers or sign with a new team in free agency. Very risky buy. Make sure the price is low on him, mid to late second at absolute most. Ramondre Stevenson, same price tag, mid to late second at most, has a big contract, but at risk of competition being added. I would say there's a very good chance that the Patriots spend a second, third, or fourth round pick on a running back this year, buying into the player that I saw a couple of years back is fun with Ramondre Stevenson. I think he can be a talented running back, can be an effective, efficient fantasy performer, and the new offense is exciting with Mike Vrabel coming in. He's a true leader of men, and then you have an exciting young quarterback who hopefully will take steps in his second year, especially if they add receiver talent around him and offensive line talent potentially to the team as well. So there's reasons to buy into Stevenson, but a little bit of pessimism on the fact that he might not be like just this full-fledged workhorse next year. Aaron Jones, he's a free agent this year, but he still has it. It's very clear to me that if he re-signed with the Minnesota Vikings on like a James Conner 2-year type of deal, David Montgomery type of deal, he'd be an excellent contending mid to late second round, rookie pick type of guy, because even though he's risky, getting ahead of the curve could be worthwhile for a guy who finished RB18 in PPR points per game. So if you need a running back, you don't want to spend up for one, you might be able to get Aaron Jones for less than a mid to late second. You might be able to get Jones in a third for that or something like that, because people are worried about a 30-year-old running back, and he's clearly still talented. So that's definitely something to be encouraged by. Audric Estime is one of these guys that a lot of people get carried away with every single year. They go, oh, Javonte's a free agent. Audric Estime is going to be a workhorse, only for him to get nuked in the NFL draft. Only this year, people are actually not getting carried away with him. He's like valued as an RB 47 in fantasy right now on Dynasty markets, but I do think it's possible that he could be the starter for the Broncos next year. Again, 3rd round pick at most is what I would send away for him, because there's a very good chance they will address this position in the draft. But I do think Estime was very young, very raw, and showed some strides his rookie season. And then Nick Chubb, I mean, maybe this is just copium, but even if he is not with the Browns and he gets cut or something like that, he's Nick Chubb, man. I think he's still a talented player. And of course, he wasn't good this year, but he was coming off of a major injury. RB 55 plus just seems like Chubb is worth the gamble for me, like late 3rd rounder, send it away and see what you got there. So that's kind of my thought process on him. And then let's get into the running back sells. I wish I had like some big name running back that I'm just selling and all these hot takes or whatever. But the reality is the running back position is actually being really smartly priced right now on the open market, because people recognize and understand that this running back draft class coming in is legit, and it's going to affect the landscape of the running back position. So nobody's getting carried away with overvaluing a guy with a good projectable workload in 2025. And I mean, I have to give the annual shop your old productive running back spiel like I do every year. Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, those type of guys, James Conner even, are worth selling if you are trying to rebuild. Again, I actually think they're pretty appropriately priced if you're just contending again. If you won the championship, you're trying to run it back with Derrick Henry again next year, cool, hold them. I'm not going to tell you to sell them right now. The real sells here are not overly interesting. I got Zach Charbonnet, Tank Bigsby, Braylon Allen, Isaac Guerrero, and Kendre Miller. All of these guys showed talent. All of them are kind of in split backfields. If this running back class was terrible coming in, I wouldn't suggest selling these guys. I actually would say, oh man, Zach Charbonnet a year from now when Kenneth Walker maybe hits free agency could be the starting running back for the Seattle Seahawks. Tank Bigsby, same thing. Travis Etienne on the final year of his deal. Maybe he's going to be the starting running back for Jacksonville 2 years from now. I would say that those guys are probably pretty good bets, but given the strength of this running back class, you never know if those teams add pieces to the backfield. You never know if Kenneth Walker gets re-signed. How many times have we done this song and dance where we're like, oh yeah, Trey Benson's going to be the starting running back for the Arizona Cardinals once James Conner leaves in free agency, only for them to re-sign James Conner. How many times have we done this? We've done this so many times, and I'm really sick of projecting that a guy is going to move on in free agency when these teams are getting running backs for such a sizable discount to the point that they're actually just maintaining their own guys these days. And that's kind of a new market dynamic that we never used to see before, because what happened before was any running back who was good would go get a 3-year, $28 million deal with a new team, some terrible franchise who just needs weapons, and then the incumbent backup would be elevated and they would be the starter now. But now that running backs are not getting paid a lot, people are like, yeah, I'll give 2 years, $10 million to my starting running back and to keep him around. Like, that makes total sense to me. So I'm not going to get carried away when people are like, oh, Kenneth Walker, he's going to get like a massive deal in free agency from some other team, and Zach Charbonnet is going to be the starting running back. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. That, like, they're probably going to get Kenneth Walker on like a 3-year, $18 million deal or some shit. So I'm not excited about, really elevating these backup running backs who could be starting running backs in the future. And that includes Braylon Allen, Isaac Guerrero, and Kendre Miller. There's just no path to immediate volume outside of handcuff appeal. And even with Allen and Guerrero, they're not even the only good handcuffs in their backfield. I mean, Breece Hall went down for a game or two, and we saw Isaiah Davis look good. We saw Jordan Mason, of course, be a very good running back backup to Christian McCaffrey. So there's just a lot of crowded backfields here that are being overvalued because, yes, the running backs are talented, but we got a lot of talented running backs coming into the league. If you guys need running backs, let me just put it this way. The best way to get running backs for your 2025 contending window, rebuilding team, house money team, just get them in the rookie draft because there's going to be so many good ones. Getting veteran running backs is probably just suboptimal this year unless you're getting a nice discount like I talked about on some of those buys. And that usually also means that you should be selling more of these running backs than you're buying. The Dynasty quarterback position. Now, we play mostly Superflex on this channel. As you guys know, quarterbacks are important. I'm going to be speaking from a Superflex frame of mind here, but keep in mind the one quarterback price tags are listed there as well. Drake May is the one outlier in what I consider to be a pretty appropriately valued position. I think the quarterback market's pretty accurate, but Drake May is the one guy that I do think is undervalued because he's kind of below the Justin Herberts and Mahomes of the world in a tier with like Jordan Love and Bo Nix and Caleb Williams. And I think that Drake May has elevated himself beyond that level, and I think he should be valued appropriately. 18 points per game in his healthy starts this year with you, me, whoever playing wide receiver, like the worst receiver core in the league, the worst offensive line in the league, one of the worst coaches in the league, and Ramondre Stevenson, like what, this guy was working with nothing. Like it would not have shocked any of us, myself included, if the raw quarterback, because that's what he was called coming out of college, looked like year one Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer. And I would have actually given him a bit of a pass for that, because I would have been like, hey, look at his situation, it's bad. He outscored Caleb Williams. He outscored Trevor Lawrence. He outscored Anthony Richardson. He outscored Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa and Kyler Murray and Jordan Love. With this team, with this supporting cast, nothing but his arm and his legs is all he had to work with. We saw the big-time throws. We saw the efficient, EPA type of stats. Drake May performed really well in that kind of stuff. They're going to add to this team in the offseason. They're going to go after T. Higgins. They're going to go after, offensive linemen in free agency. They're going to maybe draft Tet McMillan in the draft. Like, they are going to add pieces to this team, and Drake May should be valued as a mid-first round startup pick, in my opinion, because he's a young quarterback who's very talented, who can run, who scored fantasy points at a high level despite having a bad schedule and bad opponent, bad teammates, and bad coaching. And Mike Vrabel's a good coach. He's hopefully going to get a decent offensive play caller in there. I feel pretty good about Drake May all around. Even if Josh McDaniels is his play caller, I really don't care. I think Drake May's that good, and I actually think McDaniels is a better play caller when he's not the head coach of a team than people think. Bryce Young, also another guy that I think is just a good buy right now. High pedigree. He was the first overall pick. I kind of bit my tongue all for the last, year and a half on Bryce Young, because it appeared that my take on Bryce Young was going to be incorrect. I was very high on Bryce Young. You guys know he was my QB1 heading into the 2023 draft. And for about half the season this year, he played like the QB1 of that class. He played better than CJ Stroud. He played better than Anthony Richardson. By every advanced metric, after this dude was benched and came back on the field, he played at the level of a top 12 to 15 quarterback. And from week 12 onward, it translated to fantasy as well. 21.6 points per game is elite quarterback level play. For a guy that looked like he was going to be the next Zach Wilson, by week 3 of his second season, we saw a dude actually produce at a high level. And I think that is very, very intriguing, knowing that he was a very good prospect coming out of Alabama, Heisman Trophy winner, all the metrics you could have wanted. And also, like Drake May, he's throwing to Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette, who is very raw, Jalen Coker, an undrafted free agent. Of course, Chuba Hubbard had a great season, and his line is pretty solid, and Dave Canales is a good play caller. But the foundation is there. The fun is not. They need to add pieces to this wide receiver court. Man, like they trade for Garrett Wilson or something. This is going to be really fun for Bryce Young, and I think Bryce Young has a chance to reestablish himself as a top 12 dynasty quarterback as soon as midway through his third season. I think we could see that, and I loved Bryce Young coming out. Like I said, I bit my tongue most of his first year and a half because he did not look like a good quarterback. It looked like the makings of a bust in waiting, but he turned the corner midway through the year, man. He looked like a good quarterback. He was taking the Chiefs to the wire. He took my Buccaneers to overtime. He took the Eagles down to the wire. Xavier Legette catches that ball. They beat Philadelphia. Like, this dude played at a very, very high level, and I do not think it's outrageous to say that he should be valued very similarly, because he's really young still and has the upside to still accumulate value at just 23 years old. He should be valued very, very similarly to Brock Purdy and Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff and Dak Prescott in terms of what we would pay for this guy in a trade, because he has the upside to still develop and still get better and still become a higher value dynasty quarterback. Like, to me, he is miles ahead of Sam Darnold's and Anthony Richardson's, and even guys in his own, from the rookie class this year, like Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy. I just prefer Bryce Young. He was a better prospect. He performed at a high level down the stretch this year. Bryce Young, put some respect on it. He is absolutely coming back. And if you guys have Bryce Young shares like I do, you feel very, very good that you didn't sell them at completely nothing like you probably wanted to at some points in time. Tua Tagovailoa, I have him valued exactly where he is among quarterbacks. So me saying he's a buy has nothing to do with where he's valued at quarterback. It's more so his overall startup superflex value, because in the mock that we did the other day, I got him in the 7th round. For a guy, when healthy, and of course that's a sticking point with him, has been a consistent QB1 producer. I do believe that Tyreek, whether he stays or goes, and Jalen Waddle and Mike McDaniel and Devon Achane, this offensive infrastructure is still very good. It's still something that can propel Tua to play at a very high level, which is what we saw from him when he came back from his injury this year for like a 5-6 game stretch. He was on fire. And he has the capability of being a very efficient top-end quarterback in fantasy. So Tua Tagovailoa Yeah, he's not as sexy as some of the, top end guys that run and, have all these like weapons and stuff like that, but he's in a very good scheme for his skill set. He gets the ball out really, really fast. He has good receivers. He has a good coach, and he's a good quarterback. Yes, he's got to stop taking, hits to the head, but that's pretty much the only risk that I really see with him, because otherwise I feel like he's a very safe asset. So moving down to the sells at quarterback, and I kind of teased Michael Penix already. I don't want to get into too much of a rabbit hole with Michael Penix, because I do think, generally speaking, you guys spent the 204, 205 on your rookie draft on this guy. You feel very good about the return that you got, because at the very minimum, you're getting a 1 for him in a trade right now. He is already almost 25, though, so he's not the same case as most other rookie quarterbacks entering year 2, like, for example, Drake May and J.J. McCarthy from this year's class, nearly 3 years younger than Michael Penix. Penix also did only play 3 games, and he beat up on the Panthers, the Giants, and the Commanders' defense is some of the worst in the NFL. Maybe I'm nuts here, but I'm not ranking this guy above Tua, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, all these dudes, because I've seen 3 games of him, and I did not believe too much in the prospect to begin with. He was not expected to go 8th overall in the draft. I know he went in the top 8, and that would indicate he was some great prospect. His over-under heading into the NFL draft was 32.5. People thought that he was a fringe first-round caliber prospect, and the Falcons fell in love with him. I had concerns with the accuracy, with the consistency. Of course, from a fantasy perspective, he doesn't really use his legs all that much. He's more of a pocket passer. To me, the QB 13-14 to the QB 22-23 is a massive tier, depending on what you're looking for, whether it's a consistent producer like a Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, or maybe you're looking for more accumulation of value like a Bryce Young, a Bo Nix, a J.J. McCarthy, somebody like that. All of those guys profile differently. They have different archetypes. But for me, the one constant is that Michael Penix belongs at the end of that tier because of the caliber of prospect he was, because of the fact that he doesn't have the same ceiling from a rushing standpoint as some of the other guys. I just can't put him at the top of this tier, which is where Keep Trade Cut has him right now at quarterback 15. It's just simply a little bit too early for me. I would much rather have, for example, J.J. McCarthy from his own draft class, who's almost 3 years younger, had a better arm, runs the ball more, in a better offense, is much younger, and has a chance to really climb in value. I get that he hasn't played yet. We have no idea if he's as good as Michael Penix, quote unquote, but I'm believing in J.J. McCarthy, Kevin O'Connell, and all that, that situation going on there. Speaking of the Vikings, Sam Darnold, Anthony Richardson, and Justin Fields are all sells for me as well. And it's really just for long-term viability because, Darnold specifically had a great season this year. The whole picture, though, of Sam Darnold's career has me worried. If they lose tonight, I'm recording this Monday morning as I'm talking here, or maybe they lose next week to Philadelphia, is he going to still be in the Rolls Royce of quarterback situations with the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell calling plays, great offensive line, the best wide receiver in the world, one of the best number 2s in the league, one of the best tight ends in the league? It's an elite situation. Are they going to move to J.J. McCarthy, or are they going to stick with Sam Darnold? That is the big question everyone has about the Minnesota Vikings as soon as their season ends. And again, the further they go in the playoffs, probably the more likely Sam Darnold is back. But if he's gone and he goes and signs with the Titans or the Raiders or some of these, like one of these teams that just does not have the infrastructure that the Minnesota Vikings have, I'm worried for his long-term viability. He was a bad fringe backup caliber quarterback for like 6-7 years until he got to Minnesota. So maybe this is a Baker Mayfield situation. Maybe this is a Geno Smith situation. However, those guys stayed with their current teams. So if Minnesota does not stay with Sam Darnold and he goes to a different team, I have less and less faith that he is going to be the next Baker Mayfield or be the next Geno Smith. And then with Richardson and Fields, I'm just not sure they're good. Like, I don't know if they can pass the football at an NFL quarterback caliber level, because Fields, when he was available from the Bears last year, they fetched, a 4th-round pick for him, and the Steelers benched him after like 4 or 5 games for Russell Wilson, who's like mid as shit. And then you also have Anthony Richardson, who probably had one of the most inaccurate quarterback seasons we'll see in a while. Like, you want to pull up a highlight reel of Anthony Richardson misses, like it's as bad as it gets for a quarterback. I don't see, and also it's not like he has like the mental makeup to get better like Josh Allen did. Like, think of Josh Allen second year versus Anthony Richardson second year. Josh Allen hurdled Anthony Barr his second year and then flexed on him and, was talking shit after. That's completely different than sitting out a game because you needed a breather. Like, I don't believe in Anthony Richardson. It's hard to explain. I think if he turns the corner and becomes this great quarterback, it will be a shock to a lot of people. So for me, I think Anthony Richardson is a sell for that reason. I don't think he's going to be a starting quarterback for very much longer. I get that he's young. I get that he runs. I get that he has all this upside and maybe he needs to mature a little bit. But man, you're getting ones for him still in trades. Like, you got to sell him for that, in my opinion. So I'm going to move on to the tight end position. Again, I went on a little mini rant there. Hopefully I'm not going too long on this video, but again, I don't think anybody minds when I go on a rant on the Dynasty market here. Dynasty tight ends, a lot more buys than I usually have at this position. Precisely why I like to go big or go home at this position. You guys, if you guys have ever been in a startup with me, and we've done a number of listener leagues, and we're going to continue to do so. And of course, if you guys want to be in those listener leagues, they will go to site subscribers. So head on over to Flock Fantasy and make sure to use the promo code FSE. But the reason I don't like to invest heavily in tight ends is because it is one of the most random positions in all of fantasy football. There's random dudes that pop out of the woodworks and have decent seasons. Look at like Jonnu Smith and Cade Otton this year. Was anybody drafting these guys very highly last year? Look at, some of the guys that were going early. Look at Mark Andrews, how disappointing he was to start the year. Look at some of the guys at the top. Look at Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid. Like, it feels like we just have no fucking idea how to value this position properly. And the talent fluctuates drastically. And even if you are talented, maybe your team isn't using you at the best level, like we've seen with like David Njoku and George Kittle and some of these guys. So for me at the tight end position, it's like I just kind of like to take 3 or 4 different stabs at the position late in my startup draft, as opposed to spending up for a big guy or drafting 2 or 3 really good options, even if it's tight end premium. However, Brock Bowers is different, man. He's a buy despite being my tight end one and the market's tight end one. The reason I think he's a buy, even though he's the 10th overall player according to Keep Trade Cut, and the tight end one by over 22% more than Trey McBride, the tight end two, I just frankly think the gap should be bigger. I think he should be way more valuable than any tight end in fantasy, any tight end in Dynasty. Your league mate who has Brock Bowers might not truly know what they have. If you offered them 2 1s and a 2 in a Superflex tight end premium league, they might be like, shit, I might have to make this trade. I got, 2 1s and a 2. That could be anything, man. Brock Bowers should cost 3, maybe even 4 first-round picks in tight end premium formats. He is that much more valuable than every other tight end in fantasy, to the point that if you have him, do not sell him for anything virtually. And if you don't have him, go and buy him, especially if you're in a position where you have, let's say, a team that's starting to become really good and you have 5 1s in this year's rookie class. Once those first start to really accumulate value because people get excited about the class and whatnot, trade 2 of them for Brock Bowers, man. Like, he's just that much better than every other tight end in fantasy. And yeah, we got some good ones coming into the league with Tyler Warren and, Colston Loveland and Harold Fannin and whatever. But man, Brock Bowers might be the tight end one in Dynasty for the next 5-7 years. He's just that good. So for me with Bowers, go send some offers. Even if you don't need a tight end, he's just that much more valuable than every other one. Sam Laporta, I also really like as a buy. I actually think he's probably the best buy in all of Dynasty tight ends right now, because he got out to a slow start. The Detroit Lions weren't throwing the ball. He dealt with some injuries. But again, at wide receiver and tight end, talent breaks tiers. And to me, Laporta is the 3rd most talented young tight end in the NFL, behind McBride and behind Bowers. And him and McBride honestly might just be as good as each other, with McBride in a better situation. It's so hard for me to not say that you should buy a guy who just had an historic rookie season 2 years prior. And of course, what Brock Bowers just did wipes what Laporta did out of the water. But prior to Bowers' season, that was the best rookie tight end season we'd ever seen with Sam Laporta. So for me, I'm buying him actively right now. The rest of these guys are kind of just undervalued future production who should be safe from an addition in the draft. David Njoku is tight end 10 and Keep Trade Cut. I have no idea why, to be honest, because they don't have a good quarterback, because it's the Browns. I don't know, but David Njoku is really good. Evan Ingram outside the top 18 tight ends despite being productive the last couple of years. Dallas Goedert and Hunter Henry are consistent, usable later round tight end options who, if they're available in startups at, pick 1604, which is probably where they're going to go, I'm going to take guys like this. I'm going to forego drafting a 7th round startup pick tight end when I can draft 3 or 4 of these guys like Goddard and Henry. And that's how I ended up with a lot of Cade Otton, a lot of David Njoku in years past, a lot of Trey McBride in years past, a lot of those type of guys in my dynasty portfolios because they weren't going high before. But if you do hit on somebody from that territory of the draft that becomes a consistent every week starter at tight end, it feels really, really good. And you have a really good team as a result of it. And then Noah Fant, I just kind of can't quit him. I still think he's talented. I still think he can be the next like Jonnu Smith. Maybe a cap casualty in Seattle would do him some good, go off to a new team. And then finally, closing out this video, I'm going to talk about some of the sells at the tight end position. And this first one really shocked me. I really thought I was going to come into this offseason being the voice of reason on Dalton Kincaid. I thought everybody was going to overreact, and I was going to be like, hey, listen, guys, he's still developing. He's flashing. He's only entering his third year. And then I found out he's the fucking tight end 6 in Dynasty rankings right now. Why are we not factoring in that he was one of the biggest busts in all of fantasy this year? I really thought that everybody was going to overreact and rank him like tight end 22. And that's not at all what's happening right now. He's tight end 6 on Keep Trade Cut right now. It can't happen. There's at least a 50% chance or more that he's just not good. Like, he's never going to be this elite fantasy tight end. You have to rank young tight ends like Tucker Kraft, Cade Otton, Jake Ferguson, maybe even like Kyle Pitts. Like, between the two of them, at least Kyle Pitts is like younger than Dalton Kincaid still, despite entering his 4th season. And then you have David Njoku and Andrews and Kittle and other veteran tight ends that probably need to go ahead of Dalton Kincaid as well. Again, I'm not giving up on him. I have him tight end 13. I think maybe if you could get him for a mid to late second, he would be a good value. But the market suggests you should be able to get a late first, early second for him. And to me, I would sell him for that in a heartbeat. So definitely just sell Dalton Kincaid. Like, according to Keep Trade Cut, George Kittle is about a late 3rd round value in difference between Dalton Kincaid. Like, that is absurd, dude. Like, George Kittle, I don't care how old he is way more valuable than Dalton Kincaid. For the next 2 years, I know George Kittle is going to be a stud, and I do not know that about Dalton Kincaid. So to me, that is a big, big time difference in my value. I really did think that I was going to log in to Keep Trade Cut, look at these values when I was making the trade value chart, and it was going to say Dalton Kincaid, tight end 19. I was going to be like, okay, I got to talk some people off the ledge here. He's still a half decent bet. No. Tight end 6 is fucking ludicrous. So Isaiah Likely, tight end 12 in Dynasty. Again, Andrews isn't going anywhere anytime soon, so I get it. He's probably that valuable from a talent standpoint, but I don't see a lot of projectable volume for Isaiah Likely in the short term while Mark Andrews is still there. So to me, he's still a little bit overvalued from that perspective, and that's why I would consider him a sell. But that is the end of the video. Again, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you got some value. Hopefully you enjoyed the market talk that I kind of went through here and kind of some trade strategies surrounding how we want to address the markets in your respective leagues, especially this time of year. Sometimes people don't know what to do. People are like, okay, it's January. Should I be buying picks? Should I be selling my players? What should I be doing? Generally speaking, it's probably smart to buy draft picks this time of year because they're only going to go up in value. And it's probably not smart to buy contending assets this time of year because they're probably only going to go down in value or maybe risk losing value if they add pieces to their teams. But you never know. I mean, you sometimes can get really good values on your Tyreek Hills, your Deebo Samuels, or whatever because everybody's obsessed with young players this time of season. So again, if you guys want access to this entire Dynasty trade value chart, head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. You'll get 30% off all of the packages. You get 7 days for free. You get 6 months for free and a free team review so I can break down your Dynasty roster, tell you exactly what I would do when you sign up annually using that promo code FSE. At the end of this month, we will be having a new annual sign-up bonus incentive called a buy, sell, hold report, where we'll give you guys very, very personalized advice, trade-specific questions, and buys and sells based on your team, based on who has them in your league using our My Teams feature. All of that stuff will be coming very, very soon. And if you guys do sign up for annuals now, you'll still get access to your free buy, sell, hold report that will come as an a la carte as well. If you guys want to buy more of those will also be available for purchase on the site as well. But you will get a free one when you sign up annually. And even if you sign up now, we'll make sure that you get your free buy, sell, hold report when those come out. Probably over the next 2 weeks, we should have those coming out to you guys. Very excited about this product. I really do think it's going to be very, very valuable, personalized insight that you guys won't get anywhere else. And of course, Dynasty rankings, Dynasty articles, draft guides, all that stuff will be coming to the site this coming months as well. We're going to have the first edition of our draft guide about a month from now. We'll probably have 25, 30 players from the rookie draft in there. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. Check out Underdog Fantasy if you guys are still, throwing picks on the NFL playoffs, or you want to get involved in playoff best ball. They're probably going to have some reboot, gauntlet returns, mitten returns type of drafts coming after this round of the playoffs. So definitely check out everything Underdog is doing. The link for that is down below in the description. Underdog Fantasy, promo code FSE for up to $1,000 in bonus cash. And again, make sure to check out the site and everything we got going on there. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.